Hey guys, so ever since Dark and Darker has been on this downward trend, it's been on for a while, and with the most recent changes made to the test server, I think it's time to take a break from Dark and Darker, maybe forever, we'll see. But today, we start a new journey, Legacy, Steel and Sorcery. A few of you have mentioned about this game, and after having looking into it just a tiny bit, I think actually this is probably one of the more interesting and exciting games, actually somewhat similar to Dark and Darker. So, let's get straight into it. The first thing is to make your family name, which is basically your account name, and to create a character. There are 5 classes: Warrior, Hunter, Priest, Rogue, and Wizard. There is also an upcoming one, according to the roadmap, which is the Paladin, so a decent variety. I went with the Warrior first of all. I'd want to play melee just to get a bit of a feeling for melee combat, and it's probably one of the simpler ones, so we'll see how it feels. My very first impressions upon starting the game are, first of all, this game doesn't run very well. My PC is probably pretty out of date at the moment, but I don't really have this issue with too many games, but this game I definitely do. I've lowered the settings and enabled frame generation, and I usually sit around 90 FPS, but it definitely drops when stuff is going on or in certain areas. Maybe you're going to need a bit of a stronger PC for this one. Of course, it's third person. Now, personally, I do prefer first person, so unfortunately this is a bit of a downside to me, but it's something I can easily look past if the game is better itself. And that also might be a take that's kind of in the minority. I'm not sure. There's probably a reason that the vast majority of RPGs are third-person oriented, and there are only a few which are first-person, which, you know, Oblivion, well, Elder Scrolls, although you can play those in third-person as well. I do wonder how most people would actually play those games. My first impressions of the melee combat is the melee combat does feel more satisfying than Dark and Darker did. Your hits feel more impactful, they feel more meaningful. I quite like it at the very beginning. Although at the beginning I will say that the PvE did not feel very threatening at all, but we'll see how this goes on into the future. One thing to note about this game is it is actually made by ex-Blizzard developers. What does this mean in reality? Who really knows? I assume it's going to be that the style is somewhat inspired by perhaps things such as WoW. One thing to know about me is I actually am a pretty big WoW player. I'm not sure if I've mentioned it before, so this is actually something that does appeal to me, specifically. Possibly they want to try and, you know, make it slightly inspired, but so far it doesn't really feel anything like WoW, so I don't really think this means much either way. But we'll see how the development progresses, and maybe it will have an impact at some point. One immediate difference I feel actually a lot more immersed in this world somehow than I do in the one in Dark and Darker. Maybe this is just due to experience and because I'm very new to this game. It could just be, yeah, because of the honeymoon kind of phase. However, I feel a lot more immersed and it feels like a lot more of an interesting world. And I'm also glad it's just not so bloody dark. I know that's kind of part of the, you know, premise of Dark and Darker, but I don't know if it's really that necessary. One nice thing though that I have been feeling in this game so far is I suck. I don't know the combat at all. There are so many items going on. There's so many things in the world. I don't know any of this. Of course, this is something that will go away with time, but there are things to learn, which is something that I'm really looking forward to again, because it does feel like it's been a while since I have learnt anything playing any game on this channel. But I am enjoying my time just exploring the worlds, fighting random mobs that I come across, picking up random items and seeing what they do, if they're used for crafting, if they're treasures, if they're just something else I don't even know. Items that I possibly can use. And I'm starting to feel confident as my first run's going through. I'm getting some loot in my bag, some decent looking pieces, found that blue coin, God knows what that's for. Killed a few things, surely to get some XP from this run. Until I decide to stumble into this area and see this guy. And let's just say, I might have got a little bit overambitious for my first run, thinking that with my green weapon I can take this guy down, probably in a few hits. Let's see how it goes. I keep hitting thinking I can chain stun him like I have with the other mobs before, but I soon learned that actually he sometimes does a red attack, and this is like poise from Dark Souls. You can't break this, you can't hit through this. Maybe you can somehow, but I couldn't with my weapons. And also, I couldn't cancel my animations. It looks like you can't really... You do get locked in animations a little bit, so you can't dodge every attack very easily. So you have to be careful with your timing. Unlike I was. After getting hit for virtually all of my remaining health, I still think he's going to be close to death, so I try to finish him off. And there we go, just like that, that's the first death. I didn't actually realize as well, you do have this like secure container thing from Tarkov where you can put in a few slots and you actually don't lose this when you die. This makes more sense that in this game than it would in something like Dark and Darker, I'll say. I'm not against it at all, to be honest. I think it's fine. Just not something that I noticed for the first few runs, so I actually don't utilize it at all. But we did get actually enough XP to get to level 2. So we did get something from that run at least, along with, you know, the literal experience. But this was the moment that I realized the PvE in this game isn't all quite so easy, and it was just the first few basic mobs that I came across, and that makes a lot of sense. This brings us to the customization part of the classes. There isn't too much, to be honest. Maybe in the future they'll expand on this. Right now you have weapon skills, which just come with your weapon, there's no customization there. Except unless you count which weapon you're using, which I guess you can. Class skills, you only have 3 of them, at least on the warrior. I haven't checked the other classes yet, and you usually have choice of 2 or 3 of them. Some of them you have to unlock by getting to higher level. So there is a little bit of customization, but not too much. I'm hoping that they do add more in the future, but there are also traits. However, these aren't customization, these are just new effects that you can unlock as you advance in levels and unlock points. As far as I'm aware, you can just have all of them equipped eventually when you get to high enough level, but I'm not 100% sure on that, so correct me if I'm wrong in the comments if you do know. I make my way into another round though, eager to continue this journey. It's not long before we're again killing skeletons, finding our way to this pumpkin field, realizing that as soon as you're fighting more than one monster, it's not quite as easy. Eating random food that we come across in the wild, and finding gear for classes that are not the class we're playing. I also come across this skeleton mage who I think looks pretty takeable, so I try, and I get some good few hits in before he starts breathing fire. He absolutely lights me up, and then I realise that there's another player coming over. Our first encounter with another player, I'm halfway fighting a mob, a way up whether to fight or whether to just go ahead and try and run away with my inventory, which is pretty much full, and decide it's probably smarter for me to just leave. But the greed of man compels me to try and kill these 2 skeletons to get a little bit more loot. Maybe they'll have some upgrades for me. It seems like when you kill archer-based mobs, you tend to get, you know, archer-based items. So I was thinking, by killing the skeleton warrior-looking guy, maybe he'll have some armor or something for me. Which turned out to be my final mistake of this run. Disappointed in my death, I accept it, and realise you can actually spectate and see what other players are doing. After having a quick look through, it seems like there's plenty of players who seemingly seem as clueless as me. However, there's also this wizard who's trying to solo what seems to be some kind of like boss graveyard area, which seems like something pretty interesting in the future. But determined to have at least one successful extraction in this video, I set out again. This time just looking to grab a few items and actually extract. As even though I haven't actually mentioned the quest yet, we have had a quest to extract successfully for a few of the previous runs. And I would actually like to progress through it. And the quest seemed decent, just like, you know, a little bit of a tutorial. And in this run we did actually find some decent items. Nothing we can really use to upgrade our character at all, but we did find some things which we can use to upgrade our lodge, which is basically your hideout from Tarkov if you're familiar. Your base of operations where you can craft things and probably get bonuses as well, although I'm not too sure on that yet. But before long, I do start hearing the sounds of another player being somewhere close. I try looking around for him, but I can't seem to find anyone. I'm not too sure what's going on here, so I just start to head away. But as I'm heading away, I see something in the distance, and I just kind of have a look. I try to determine whether it's another player, but I think it might be, but I'm not really too sure. But before long, he throws a dagger up at me. I think that didn't really do any damage. Maybe it's some kind of dot or something. And before I know it, he's teleported up into my face and is currently slashing my face off. It seems like the PvP in this game, you get stun locked pretty heavily. This is something I've heard. There's probably some counterplay to this and it's just something that I need to learn. However, I felt like I was completely stun locked in this corner for a while, to the point where I didn't really have any chance to win the fight. I did get a few hits off, but this will bring us to our first PvP death. But it's all a learning experience, and now I know something about the rogue class, which I wouldn't have known otherwise. However, we go again. One thing I've noticed, however, is you always do seem to get a late spawn. The most amount of time I had, I believe, is about 27 minutes, whilst the lowest was as low as 17 minutes on the clock. But anyway, this time determined to play it safe, to avoid contact with other players, not to take too many risks fighting dangerous mobs, I mined some ore, grabbed some resources, which hopefully I can use to craft into better weapons or armor. Took my time to kill a few wolves. Killed this mid-tier looking goblin who's easy enough to stun lock on his own. Got this interesting looking weapon for the priest, which makes me actually want to try out the priest class and see what that's all about. Maybe I'll do that soon. Along with this blue material, which no idea what this is for. Presumably it's some kind of crafting material, or perhaps for your lodge. I did actually manage to find a weapon upgrade though. Another one of these green wrecking ball kind of things. Think it might be called a death ball. Definitely not my favourite weapon so far. Feels slow, feels clunky. I don't like it, but hey. It looks to be like the rarity difference is about 10 to 20% damage per level. So going from a grey to a green is probably around 30 to 40% of an increase in damage. So it's probably worth using. But anyway, soon after we actually made it to the extraction and did finally successfully extract. It looks like there's a lot of ways you can get sidetracked going throughout the mission, because you do spawn on the opposite side of the map to your extraction. Let's just quickly go through the quests. As I've said previously, the main questline seems to be basically a tutorial, which is fine and good for the game, I'd say. Aside from that, you also have the quest board. These are daily quests which reset. You can cancel them and choose which ones you actually want to do. If I cancel this one here, it replaces it with another randomly generated one. So you do get some choice. You only can choose 3 and then your quest log is full here, so you have to kind of pick wisely. These give you randomly generated rewards, which seem to be resources, crafting materials, consumables, all sorts of different things, which is quite nice. And then there are also the weekly quests, which is another more advanced thing where it seems like these are higher tier things, definitely. I haven't completed any of these yet, so I have no idea if you can do multiple of these per week or how that works. So Morthog defeated, I assume this is a boss of some kind, and you get a loot box, which is pretty fun. Or extracting from a certain map, which is a high tier map. You get some Elder Dark Runes. Again, I don't really know what this is for, probably for crafting or for the lodge or something like that. But if I just quickly go ahead and take a look at the Dawnhammer Crypt, you do need 5 pieces of uncommon gear to actually enter this, and you can only play in solo or duos, so that's quite interesting. With our new green weapon, I decided that we would go back in and see what we can accomplish, and after picking up some pretty basic materials, I see this guy again, the first death that we had. So I decide, now we're full HP, we have a bit more experience, we have a better weapon, let's give it another go. And I suppose I'll end this video like that. Pretty much just the way it started, dying to this red skeleton. Thank you guys for watching. If you're a bit of a Dark and Darker refugee, I would heavily recommend this game so far. It's still early days for me, however my first impressions of it have been very good and I'm excited to play more of this, and I'm going to practice this off camera, and I'll be uploading some of my older style videos on this game. I might have to adapt the video style a little bit as the game is a little bit different, but we'll see how it goes. Thank you guys for watching, I appreciate it. If you'd like to see more Legacy, Steel and Sorcery content, I'd appreciate any subscriptions, they'll help you out in that regard and also me. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments, I'd appreciate likes if you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one guys, thank you.